In this practice, we'll be working on the muscles that support the hip in the full circumference, from the front to the inner thigh, to the back, and to the outer hip. In so many classes that I've taught and practiced concerning open hips, I find that most of the movements are about stretching. We'll be doing some of that, but also a lot of strengthening in all of those areas as we circumnavigate the hip area. We'll start standing. You may want to use blocks or a blanket for your practice. If so, grab them. We'll start the practice with some warm-ups. Come to the front of your mat. Stand in kapotasana and stand tall. Take your arms up, spread your fingers, reach slightly back. Exhale, take your hands down to the mat and step your right foot back. Balance yourself as you rise up. Reach up. Take your hands back, your gaze back. Release your hands to the mat. Step your back foot forward. Place your hands to your low back and rise up. Reach up and back, hands nice and wide apart. Exhale, take your hands down to the mat. Step your left foot back. Rise up. Exhale, release your hands down. Step back to downward facing dog. In downward facing dog, lift your heels, bend your knees, lift your sit bones up. Now straighten your legs. Bend your knees again. Draw your knees back to straighten your legs and release your heels down. Notice the difference. If you take the time to lift your heels, to bend your knees, to lift your sit bones, notice how engaged the legs feel as you slowly reach your heels back. Walk your hands back to your feet. Take your arms up. Take your hands back down. Walk them forward. Walk your feet forward. Place your hands at the hips and rise up. Reach up and back. Take your hands to the mat. Step your right foot back. Bring your right knee to the mat. Take your hands right above the left knee. Keep your left knee right over the ankle. From there, reach up. Release your hands down. Step back to downward facing dog. Come through to a plank position. Lower yourself to the mat. Baby Cobra, draw your heart forward. And come back to downward facing dog. Walk your hands back to your feet. With your knees bent, free your arms, reach up in a chair pose. Release your hands down. Walk them forward. Walk your feet forward. Hands to the hips to rise up. Reach up, reach back. Take your hands down alongside your ankles. Step your left leg back. Bring your left knee down. Keep your right knee over your right ankle. Reach your arms up. Reach back. Release your hands down to the mat. Step back to a plank position. Lower yourself to the mat. Draw your heart forward and release down. Come back to downward facing dog. Walk your hands back to your feet with your knees bent. Free your hands, chair pose. These warm-ups, however you like to do your warm-ups, feel free. If you want to do more chaturanga, up dog, down dog, feel free to do that. Release your hands down. Step your hands forward. Walk your feet forward. Place your hands to your low back and rise up. In this sun salute, we'll start working the front hip muscles. Reach up and back. Exhale, take your hands down to the mat. Step your right foot back. Bring your right knee down. This time, take your left knee forward of your ankle. Take your hands right on top of the knee for a nice thigh stretch in the right leg. Reach up if you'd like. Release your hands down to the mat. Step your back foot forward. Place your hands to your low back and rise up. Reach up and slightly back. Exhale, take your hands down to the mat. Step your left leg back. Bring your left knee down. Take your hands on top of the right knee as the right knee comes forward of the ankle. Reach your arms up if you wish. And back. Release your hands down. Step your back foot forward. Place your hands to your low back. Rise up. Reach up and back. Take your hands to the mat. Step your right foot back. Bring your right knee down. Walk your left foot to the outer edge of the mat. Turn your left toes out. Keep your left knee aligned over the ankle. Bow in. This with both hands to the inside of the stance. Draw down. Inhale, rise up. For some of us, we might be happier if the back knee had a little padding. Lift up your right foot. Maybe you can grab hold of your pants or your shin or your foot and give yourself a thigh stretch. And as you do, really work the foot against the hand. See, the strong action is you just draw deeper into the pose. You just let the pelvis draw down. Release your right foot. Come back to downward facing dog. Have a nice ease in your breath. Step your right foot forward. Turn your right toes out. Bring your back knee down. Walk your hands at the diagonal and bow in. Start to work the inner thigh muscles slightly as you bow in. Now let's go a little bit deeper. So draw the pelvis down. Get a thigh stretch on the back leg. And as you're ready, lift up your back foot. Once again, you can reach back and hold on to your pants if you wish, or if you can grab hold of the leg, do that. Just keep drawing deeper into the pose. Now work your foot and your shin against your hand so the foot is reaching back. So you've got this nice engagement as you just drop a little bit deeper in the pose. Release out of this and come to downward facing dog. Lift your right leg up, so it's a three-legged downward dog. Lift your right hip a little bit higher than your left. Bend your right knee. So you get both a thigh stretch and an inner thigh stretch. You get a thigh stretch on the lifted leg and an inner thigh stretch on the grounded leg. Step your right foot to the outer side of your right hand. Bring your back knee down again. You can do the same stretch we just did, or maybe you can lift yourself up and find your back foot and work the back foot against your hand to get this nice opening. So it's not about taking the heel close to the buttocks. It's about enabling the muscles to engage more fully. Release your hands down. Step back to downward facing dog. Lift your left leg up. Lift the left hip higher than the right. Bend your left knee. Keep a strong engagement with the hands even as you step your left foot to the outer left hand. Turn your toes out. Bring your right knee down. And again, your choice, whatever variety of the pose you can come to. If you'd like to lift up in the pose as you lift your back foot, find what works for you. Keep the back leg really active. And release out of the pose. Come back to downward facing dog. And in downward facing dog, bend your knees again. Lift your sit bones. I like just coming back to this constantly, these movements where you really focus on the actions of the legs to refine the downward facing dog. With your sit bones lifted, now draw from the pelvis down to the heels. Walk, step, or hop your way up to the front of the mat and rise up. Inhale, reach your arms up and slightly back. Exhale, take your hands down and step your right foot back. Come to a crescent lunge. First, balance yourself with your hands right above your left knee. Now lift up your right heel a lot. Now bend your right knee. So you're really engaging the leg nicely. Now straighten the right leg and drop into the pose a little bit more. We'll do that 2 more times. So lift the heel high, bend the right knee. So really engaging those muscles of the right leg. Straighten the right leg and drop in. 1 more time. You lift the heel up. You bend the right knee. Really pressing into the base of the right big toe. Straighten the right leg. Drop in. Reach your arms up if you like. Release your hands down. Step your back foot forward. Place both hands to the low back and rise up. Reach up and back. Take your hands to the mat. Take your left leg back. Balance yourself, hands above the right knee. Lift your heel, bend your left knee. Straighten the leg and drop in. Lift the heel, bend the left knee. Straighten the left leg and drop in. Okay. Lift up, strong engagement of the legs, hugging the midline as you do. Bend your knee. Straighten your leg. Draw down, maybe even reach your arms up and release your hands down. Step your back foot forward. Place your hands to your low back and rise up. Stand in Tadasana. Draw your right knee up and reach your right foot forward. Bend your right knee. Place your right foot down. Lift your right knee up. Reach it forward. Bend the knee and release down. All on its own power and own mobility. Reach the right knee up. Reach out. Bend your knee and release. Still working on the front part of the hip. Come to the opposite side with your right leg balancing you. Reach your left leg forward. Bend the knee and release down. Lift the knee up. Reach it out. Bend the knee and down. Lift your left leg up. Reach it out. Bend your knee and release down. Come back to Tadasana. Let's come to the mat in downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, bend your right knee. Come forward toward a plank. Take your right knee toward your right elbow and reach back. From downward facing dog again. Right knee toward right elbow and back. Again, draw the right knee forward and come back to downward dog. Take the left knee forward. Bend your left knee, tap, reach back. Left knee forward, tap, and back. Bend the left knee, come forward, and draw back. Walk your feet to your hands. Place your hands to your low back and rise up. We combined a lot of moves to open the front of the hip area. Now let's go to the inner thigh muscles. Another great way to open our hips. First, let's learn how to engage the adductors, the inner thigh muscles. Grab a block. Place the block right between your knees and hug your knees in. So you're squeezing the block. Keep squeezing the block. Draw your pelvis back. Reach your arms up. Have this nice fullness in your pose. Keep squeezing and lift yourself up. Squeeze the block. Take your hands to your low back. Keep squeezing the block. Bend your knees again, but this time come forward in the forward bend. At some point you can release your hands if you wish. With your knees bent, keep on squeezing the block. And lift your sit bones a little bit higher. Squeeze the block, bend your knees more. Take your hands to your low back and rise up. Come to a seated pose, squeezing the block. As you sit, squeeze the block. Keep that squeezing in. Lean back and lift your feet up. Keep squeezing in. Can you free your hands as you keep squeezing in? A strong engagement. Keep a nice engagement. Inner thighs hugging in, balancing yourself. And release your feet down. Now come to a supine pose. Lie down. Squeeze the block with your inner knees. Take your arms in a cactus pose. Lift your feet up. Keep squeezing the block. Keep the strong engagement. Notice how your inner thigh muscles really have to work in this pose. Reach your feet back just slightly more. Keep that engagement. Release your feet down. Come to a standing pose and step wide. In your wide stance, we'll continue to work the engagement of the inner thigh muscles. Usually this wide stance pose, Parsvottanasana, is all about stretching. But let's see how we can engage these inner thigh muscles. Bend your knees, pull your feet in toward each other. Maybe you even feel that engagement already. Take your forearms down to the tops of the knees. Now squeeze the knees in, pull your feet in toward the midline of the stance. Keep that engagement. Now let's see if we can get just a little bit more. So turn your right toes out. Keep your left foot like it is. Take your right hand so that your forearm now presses your inner knee as you start to straighten your left leg. You can take your left hand down if you wish, but keep a strong action. The forearm working against the inner knee and inner shin area. Come back to the center position. Parallel your feet. Bend your knees slightly. Pull in toward the midline. Walk your hands over to the left side. Turn your left toes out slightly. Align your knee with your toes. Take your left hand to the inner shin, inner knee area. Work the inner knee into the arm. So both the arm and the leg are working nicely. And bow in slightly. Notice the strong engagement you get in the inner thigh. Now parallel both feet. Walk your hands back to the center, but take your hands nice and wide apart. And draw down into the forward fold. Bend your knees to pull the feet in toward each other. And notice the more you engage the inner thigh muscles, you feel like you can go a little deeper in the pose. Place your hands to your low back with knees bent. Pull your feet in toward each other to rise up. So we've done a nice practice engaging the front of the hip and the inner thigh muscles that affect the hip area. Now let's start to engage the back muscles, in particular our butt muscles. So come to the front of your mat with your feet hip distance apart. As if stepping back to do a crescent lunge, take your right hand on your right cheek. Lift your right foot up and tap back. You'll have to bend your left knee slightly to do that. And release. Notice how you feel the engagement on the right cheek as you do this. Draw your right foot back, tap, and come back. And again, right leg goes back to tap and comes back. Now let's combine that with the outer hip rotators, the abductors. So we'll take the right foot off to the right at a diagonal. So it's going back and to the right. So take the right foot back first. Notice that. Now take the right foot to the side and notice how the outer hip changes. Take the right foot forward. Do that 2 more times. Reach back, Then to the right side and down. And one more. Reach back to the side and forward. Now do it with the left side. Take your left hand to the left cheek. Reach back and to the side and forward and down. Go back to the side, forward and down. Last time, reach back to the side, forward and down. Back to Tadasana. Notice the difference. Just shift your weight to the right leg, to the left leg, and now center your weight with equipoise, 50% on each side. We'll do another balance pose. In flexion and extension, you'll notice how the back muscles really engage. Lift your right knee up. Now take the right knee back as if you're trying to kick your butt with your right heel. Lift your right knee up. Try to stay upright rather than bowing forward. Take the right knee back. One more. Take the right knee up. Reach it back. Notice the engagement in the hip area. Release your right foot down. With your weight on the right foot, lift your left leg up. Reach your left knee back. Lift your knee up. Reach back as if trying to get a little bit more height out of the left foot. And lift up. Reach it back. Release your foot down. Come back to Tadasana. So now come down to your belly. And on your belly, reach your hands straight back. Lift your chest up, your head up, lift your hands up, and lift your feet up. Just take your hands to your buttocks. You can feel how they're working so well to keep a nice engagement in this hip area. Release your feet down. Locust is such a good pose for so many reasons. And sometimes when I ask people to bend their knees, everyone wants to grab hold of the feet. But let's avoid that this time. With your hands to your buttocks, cheeks, lift your chest up. Now lift your knees up. Now release down. Do that 2 more times. Lift your chest up. I find that when people grab a hold of their feet, they kind of lose the action of the buttocks. So see if you can just keep that as you lift the knees higher and draw down. And one more time. The chest lifts up, the knees lift up, the feet are engaged. You feel the buttocks working on this one. Release down. Come to all fours position. Make your way to downward facing dog. And in downward facing dog, just enjoy this fullness to your breath. Nice feeling of elongation of the spine. Walk, step, or hop your way up to the front of the mat and rise up. We'll do a straight leg pose as a way to, once again, get the feeling of engagement in the back muscles. And I realize this practice is not typical of the regular flow of practices where we go from standing to seated to supine to Savasana. In this practice, we're going around the hip from the front to the middle, to the back, to the sides. And we'll go to the back muscles now that support the hip. So as you step your right foot forward and take your left foot back in this pose called Parsvottanasana, take your hands right at your hip points and hug your elbows in. Keep your back leg very strong. And as if you're trying to draw a fold right in between your feet on the mat, you're hugging in. Keep that and draw down, just to create some awareness of the hamstrings here. So as you do, don't go too deep. Keep that hugging in action of the feet. Maybe you can go a little bit deeper in your pose. Try not to round the upper back. We're just focusing on those muscles that create a little bit more aliveness, fullness in the actions of the hip. And rise up. Step your left foot forward. Take your right foot back. Balance yourself first. Hug your feet in toward each other as if you're trying to create that center fold in the mat. Draw down. Keep your back leg really active. Strong action of pulling in toward the midline as you stay in the pose. The legs are so active. The toes all the way from your foundation, from your toe tips to your ankles, to your knee, to the pelvis. Legs stay engaged so that you can really work this engagement where you're not only stretching the hamstrings, you're engaging the legs so fully. This very eccentric action of the hamstring muscles. Rise up. Step your back foot forward. From Tadasana, step your feet at least as wide apart as the mat is. Bend your knees. See if you can come down to full squat position. And gently place your pelvis to the mat. From a seated position, hold on to the back of the right thigh by interlacing your fingers right behind the leg and reach your foot forward. Just tap the right foot down. Right at the belly of the hamstrings, you start to feel how the leg engages even as you're getting more length to the leg. So I'm not coming to a full straight leg because I'm really working on keeping the strong action as I lift the right leg, release down. Left leg, interlace your fingers behind the thigh, lift your foot up. A lot of you might be a lot more flexible than myself, so you might want to take your hands a little bit closer to your foot, even to the ankle. Since we're focusing on the back side of the hip support muscles, I like feeling the hamstrings work the entire range of the motion. You lift the foot up and draw down. Just brings a little bit more awareness to the action when you can feel the muscle engage so fully, even in the fullness of the stretch, and release. From here, come to your side. With your forearm down, make a fist with your hand. With the knees bent, with the inner big toes together. One of the things that you often see to engage the outer hip muscles is this clamshell action. We're going to take it up a notch here, and we'll do this clamshell action with the hips lifted. So press into the right forearm, lift your left knee up, and take it down. Go slow. Lift up and down. And lift up slowly and take it down. Come to the opposite side. With the knees bent, lift your pelvis up and lift your right knee up and slowly take it down. You can notice a difference between the sides. It's always nice to notice like what side feels a little stronger, what side could use a little bit more work. Release out of the pose. Come to sit again, continuing this work in the outer hip area. Take your right ankle just to the outer left knee. With your hands behind you, draw your right knee away from your ribs and release. And do that again. Just keep on drawing the knee away from the ribs and back. And one more, reach it away and come back. Trade legs. Take your left ankle to that outer right knee. Draw the left knee away. If the bend in the right knee is a little bit too close for you, just take your right foot further away so that you can still do strong action and keep your left foot very active, your toes spreading throughout the action. And release out of the pose. This Firelog pose is another wonderful pose to work the outer hip. So if this action of aligning your shin bones is not working for you, you can either elevate your hip or you can straighten the bottom leg. But see if you can take your shin bones roughly over each other. Interlace your fingers behind the right knee. Right knee is trying to draw down. Start to feel that engagement in the hip area. Now if you want to do a little bit more, you can wrap your left forearm underneath the right knee. Use your right hand to stabilize your hip. You're lifting up with the left hand, but you're reaching the right knee down. Strong action of the arm and the leg in this. And you rise up to come out of the pose. Stack your legs the opposite way with the left foot on top. And just draw the left side down to wherever it feels right. And again, you might want a little elevation on your pelvis to do this. First, just take the hands around the outer knee and just work the knee down as the hands work to lift it up. Strong action on both the arms and the leg. And now we'll do kind of a 2-for-1 here. We'll come to a forward bend to come a little closer to the leg. We'll lift the knee up with our forearm and stabilize ourselves with the left hand and have the arms work the opposite. Have the right arm work in the opposite action of the leg. Come out of the pose. Stack your right shin bone on top of your left. Come to the pose again and just draw forward slightly. Maybe you notice a difference after working both sides. Trade sides as you're ready. Have the left shin bone on top. Come to forward fold. Rise up. Take your left shin bone down, your right foot to the outside of the left thigh. Park your heels as close to your pelvis as possible and line up your knees. As you do, bow forward and use your hands to really press your sit bones back. With the right leg on top, hook the right knee, either with your hand or your elbow, inner elbow. Lift up with your arm, but press down with your right knee. Use your left hand to keep the hips stable. Come out of the pose. Trade the cross of your legs. Take your left leg on top of your right. Come to a forward fold. Draw down slightly. Hook your left eye of the elbow right under the knee if possible, or just take your hand there to lift the knee up, but resist with the left leg. Reach it down. And as you're ready, make your way out of the pose. Come to lie in Savasana. In this practice, we did a whole variety of poses, not in the usual sequence we might do in a regular practice, but as a way to explore all the different sides of muscles, sides of the hip, all of each side of the hip that affects movement in a slightly different way. The practice was to engage, to make the muscles stronger, and it also included a practice to lengthen the muscles, often through eccentric actions. In Savasana, you allow the feet, the full length of the leg, the hips. After all those variations, to find stillness, to find ease, to gain the sense of rootedness. To go further in our yoga practice, taking the time to understand how to do the movements in our joints, especially our hip and our shoulders, with so much complexity, so many muscles contributing to that movement. It's so great to dissect the actions. And understand which movement affect which parts of the hip. Thank you so much for joining me in the practice. Namaste.